إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, as we are all aware, the month of Ramadan is nigh upon us. It will begin either tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, and we'll find out inshallah in a few hours. And so today's khutbah is going to be the first half, a quick reminder about the fiqh that we need to know for Ramadan, the primary questions, the primary issues that arise to understand who has to fast, who doesn't have to fast, what breaks the fast. And then a brief reminder in the second half of the khutbah of some spiritual advice to keep us inshallah strong and steadfast through this month of Ramadan. Realize, my dear brothers and sisters, that we are all painfully aware that one of the biggest controversies of our North American ummah is the fact that we don't have a unified Eid, a unified Ramadan. And this is a sad reality of the simple situation that we don't have a government in this land that will declare the Eid and Ramadan for us. Every Muslim land has its own mufti, has its own body, Hilal committee that will declare the beginning and end of the month. As we know, we are a minority here, so this government it is not its responsibility, and therefore every community takes this responsibility on itself. And so we have the differences that exist in the Muslim world have been imported, and we see them in this land as well. However, my dear brothers and sisters, what we need to realize, the difference of when Ramadan begins and when is Eid is a fiqh difference. Just like, should we put our hands here or here? Should we say Ameen out loud or not? Should we pay zakat on jewelry? These are differences amongst the four madhahib. So these differences should never lead to differences in our heart. These are legitimate differences. Some of the scholars say there should be a global unified Eid in Ramadan. Others say there should be a national sighting. Others have other opinions. Whatever opinion any community follows, that is their business and their prerogative. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not punish a community merely for following one of the acceptable positions that our scholars of old used to have. And the fact of the matter is that we in this Memphis community truly are blessed in that this community has agreed, all of the masajid have agreed when will be the beginning of the month, when will be the end of the month. And this is a very big blessing. I tell you as somebody who has intimate experience with many other communities in this country, that alhamdulillah, it is truly a blessing that all of this locality, all of the Muslims of this city, they are united on one position. And therefore, the average Muslim living in this city, living in this community, should not stand up and go against what the majority, in fact, dare I say, all of the masajid have agreed to. Even if this one individual follows a different fiqh position, then unity is more important than minor differences of fiqh. This is not a matter of halal and haram. It's not a matter of kufr and shirk and bid'ah that you cannot follow. This is a matter of minor issues of difference of opinion, and the imams and the leaders of this community have all agreed when will be the beginning and when will be the end. And inshallah, we actually have a meeting in a few hours, and we will inshallah announce whether Ramadan is tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. And alhamdulillah, the Memphis community should then follow this as a unified whole, because our Prophet ﷺ said, hadith is in Sunan at-Tirmidhi, that the fast is the day you begin your fast, and the fitr is the day that you celebrate fitr. And what is the purpose of this hadith? الصوم يوم تصومون والفطر يوم تفطرون. The fast is the day when you begin the fast. This is a hadith. What is the meaning of this hadith? It means, regardless of what happened in the clouds, regardless of when the moon was born or not, when the community decided to fast, Allah will say that is when the fast began. The fast is the day you begin to fast. And the fitr is the day you do your fitr. This is a hadith. And therefore this hadith tells us that the average Muslim should not be too concerned what's happening up in the heavens, who saw that, who didn't see it. If the community has agreed, then the fast is the day you begin your fast. And alhamdulillah, this community in this city of Memphis has a unified Ramadan and a unified Eid, and this is truly one of the blessings of this community. Now, one of the conditions of the fast, as we're all aware, is the general niyyah. And what this means is that we have the niyyah in our hearts that I'm going to fast the month of Ramadan. And one niyyah is sufficient, and if you remember it or remind yourself of it every morning, that is better. But the fact that you wake up for suhoor, the fact that you eat suhoor, this is your niyyah. What are you eating 3 a.m. in the morning for? This is your niyyah there. There's no need to verbalize, there's no need to say anything. The niyyah is the being conscious that I'm going to fast. And you can have a generic niyyah that I'm going to fast all of the month of Ramadan. And we know that there are certain factors that break the fast by unanimous consensus. Intentionally eating or drinking. Intentionally eating or drinking breaks the fast. By unanimous consensus, intimacy with one's spouse breaks the fast. Then there are some gray areas as well, and I will simply give you the positions that generally speaking the Hanbali madhab follow, and I'm generally following the Hanbali madhab in this regard. Vomiting intentionally breaks the fast. Vomiting intentionally. What is vomiting intentionally? It means you induced vomit. If you vomited out of nauseousness, if you vomited because you couldn't control yourself, then you are forgiven. But if you induced vomit, then according to a number of hadith, it seems to indicate that this will break your fast. Also, intentional ejaculation, self-induced ejaculation, even if it's not intercourse, this will also break the fast. Also, according to modern fatwa and modern fiqh, taking an injection that is meant to give you energy. For example, a glucose drip, let's say, right? You get a glucose drip. This is kind of cheating the fast. So any injection that is intended to give you energy, in contrast to injections that don't give you energy, we'll talk about that in that which doesn't break the fast. Any injection that is intended to be glucose or anything that will give you that energy, this will be something that will break the fast. And there's a difference of opinion about what if you woke up and you thought it was time for Fajr, but you had time for Suhoor, but it was past Fajr. It's a difference of opinion. If you thought it was time to break your fast, turns out it wasn't time to break your fast. Bit of a gray area over here. In other words, you quickly woke up and suppose the adhan for Fajr is at 4:50. You thought it was 4:40. Turns out it was 5 o'clock or 5:10. And you ate anyway, accidentally, thinking that it was time for Fajr. You understand? Or sorry, not time for Fajr, time for Suhoor, right? You understand the issue here. You thought it was appropriate time, but it turns out it wasn't. There's a bit of a gray area here. Insha'Allah, the strongest opinion is that Allah Azza wa Jal knew your niyyah. If you genuinely thought, it's not as if you covered the alarm clock and you didn't want to see. We're not trying to do that. If you genuinely thought that it was time for Suhoor and you had Suhoor, then your hukum or your verdict is the same as the verdict of the one who ate accidentally, right? Therefore, if you woke up and you were in a panic, I have to eat and drink, you quickly rushed to the kitchen, then you looked at the watch, and this is genuine accident, and it does happen when you're in that state, and you found out it was too late, then you are forgiven. Nonetheless, obviously, you should take precautions and try your best to make sure that it is appropriate timing. Also, my dear brothers and sisters, there's a bit of a modern controversy over the timing of what is called imsak, or not eating and drinking from the time of Fajr. You will find some minor controversy of 5 or 10 minutes, 15 minutes in the masajid timetables. This controversy goes back to an astronomical question. What is the degree that the sun has to be at before we say it is time for Fajr? Some say 15 degrees below the horizon, some say 16, some say 17, some say 18. And this is a controversy that is a little bit more technical and advanced, and what we have chosen in MIC, and some of the masajid in Memphis have chosen other positions, and that is fine because there is a bit of a difference of opinion. What we have chosen is the 15-degree interpretation, and this therefore gives us more time frame, i.e., the timetables that we publish at MIC, you will see that the time is maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes after some of the other local masajid. And the difference goes back to the technical issue of when exactly is it sunrise. And inshallah, the modern astronomical Muslim scholars of astronomy, they have multiple opinions. We have gone with the position of ISNA, ISNA, and other major organizations that have said that this degree is permitted. And therefore, what this means is that our timetables will be slightly different, but but no big deal. If you wish to follow other masajid timetables, as we said, this is a very trivial difference of fiqh. These are the factors that break the fast. How about factors that don't break the fast, but people think they do? The following list, they do not break the fast. Number 1, swallowing your own saliva. Swallowing your own saliva. It is impossible for you to remain even 1 hour without swallowing your own saliva. It's human nature. Your own saliva is excreted in your mouth and then the mouth swallows it. And this is part of Allah's mechanism to keep the mouth basically not dry. Otherwise you would not breathe normally. And the Sahaba, it is well known, would salivate like we salivate. And yet the Prophet did not tell them, do not swallow your own saliva. So having your own saliva flowing in the mouth, this is a part of Allah's mechanism for us to breathe normally. And therefore this does not break the fast. Also, according to the strongest position, inhalers, asthma inhalers, anything that you inhale that is primarily gaseous, right? So an inhaler is primarily gas. Yes, there is a very slight mist and fluid, but it will not take the ruling of drinking. So somebody who suffers from asthma and they must take an inhaler, insha'Allah ta'ala, this is permitted and it will not break the fast. Also, if you have to take a shot, an injection, that is not nutrients, it's not glucose. For example, you go to the dentist for an operation and he gives you a shot to numb the tooth. For example, you go to vaccination. For example, you need to have a flu shot. Whatever it might be. If it's non-nutrient, then the strongest position of the scholars of our times, and of course this is a modern fiqh issue, the strongest position is that this shot does not break the fast because it does not give you any nutrients. So any type of shot that does not give you any strength or glucose, it does not break the fast. Also, it's a common myth. There's no basis in the Sharia for this. For some people think they should not take a bath when fasting. And there's no basis for this. It is completely halal to take a bath, to take a shower. In fact, technically you can even go and jump in the swimming pool if you want, as long as the water does not go into your mouth, you don't swallow it. Obviously, it's a bit difficult to do that when you're swimming, but technically swimming is not something that is discouraged during fasting as long as you don't swallow. And taking a bath for sure, taking a ghusl, just even if it's to cool down. There's nothing wrong with taking a quick shower to cool down in the hot summer months when you're fasting, as long as there's no, obviously, taking in of the water. Also, the very trivial amounts of water that might come into the eyes or the ears while you're doing wudu, while you're taking a bath, this is overlooked. And our sharia is not that strict that you have to count, when I do wudu, if a liquid water comes into my eye. The sharia is not that paranoid. And we should also not become that overly strict. These trivial amounts, even when we do madmada istinshaq, we put water in our mouths. The Prophet said, don't exaggerate while you're doing wudu. Don't go all the way in, but then he didn't say don't do it either. So while we do wudu, we will put water in our mouths. And chemically, or I should say physically, it is impossible that every molecule that goes into the mouth is then spitted out. Some molecules will remain, but the point is we intended to spit that out. If a little bit remains on the linings, on the gum, the sharia is not that strict. We didn't intentionally take in water in this regard, so the sharia overlooks this. As well, my dear brothers and sisters, brushing of the teeth, including using toothpaste. No doubt it is difficult because it should not go into the throat. But if you're able to brush your teeth using toothpaste in a manner that that you do not swallow, then you are fine and you are safe. And I do understand some professions, especially in this land, you don't want to have a mouth that is smelling so bad. So yes, in some professions, if you have to be doctors or dentists or whatnot, you have to be close up to your patient. I understand. Nonetheless, if you're able to get out of this, you can use the miswak, which is a very good halal alternative. Use the miswak, which is the natural toothbrush and toothpaste that the Prophet would use. But if you do use a toothbrush and toothpaste, as long as you ensure that it does not go into the throat and is swallowed, then you are fine. We also said unintentional eating and drinking is forgiven. In other words, you are in your office, you walk by the water fountain and you forget, like usual, you just take a glass of water and you drink, then you realize, oh, I'm fasting. This is quite literally, as the Prophet said, a gift that Allah has given you. A gift that Allah has given you. So you don't have to say, oh, I broke my fast. If it was genuinely unintentional, and Allah knows your niyyah. If it was genuinely accidental, then you are forgiven. And by the way, the one who sees a Muslim eat or drink, he is not forgiven for reminding him, right? So if you forget, make sure you forget when nobody's around you. right? Of course, you can't do that, I'm just saying. But if you see a Muslim drinking from the water fountain, then you should say, Akhi, aren't you fasting? Because your obligation is to be nasiha to him. So then he will tell you, oh, I forgot, or he will tell you he's sick or whatever. But you do not remain silent if you see somebody drinking and you think that he should be fasting otherwise. Also, one of the things that does not break the fast, and it is halal to do, is to be romantic with one's spouse without leading to the actual act itself. Aisha explicitly says, hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ would kiss us and hug us while he was fasting. But then she added, but who amongst you can control himself like the Prophet ﷺ did? So the point that she is saying is that if you feel you can control yourself and not go to the full act, then this is halal and permissible, and it does not break the fast. However, if you feel that, and that's why some of the fuqaha, including the Hanbali madhab, they say, and others they say, young men who are newly married should not kiss or hug, they say. And older men, it is halal for them. But this is coming from the concept, this is coming from the fiqh of, if you can control yourself and it's not going to lead to the final product, then it is permissible. And this is really the actual ruling. As Aisha says, the Prophet ﷺ would hug us, the Prophet ﷺ would kiss us while he was fasting, but who amongst you can control himself like the Prophet ﷺ? That is the hadith. Just memorize that and then judge yourself in this regard. Also, what does not break the fast is to wake up at the Fajr time and be in the state of janaba. In other words, if the Fajr adhan is called, or even you're eating suhoor and you're in the state of janaba, this is permissible and legitimate. It does not affect the fast in the slightest. So, as long as you take a bath before praying Fajr, you may eat your suhoor, and Fajr adhan can be called, and you have to do ghusl, and you have not done ghusl. That is halal, that is jaiz, according to pretty much all of the madhahib. That does not affect your fast in the slightest. Obviously, you have to do ghusl before you pray, but you do not have to do ghusl before beginning the fast. That is also something that keep in mind. Also, the fuqaha have said, based on authentic ahadith, that it is allowed for a legitimate reason to taste food and even to chew food as long as you do not swallow it. Now again, for a legitimate reason. So once upon a time, mothers would have to chew some food for their 2-year-old children. You know, they didn't have baby food back then. How are you going to feed a 2-year-old? You have to chew it a little bit. This is how they would do it back in the day. They would take a date, chew it a little bit, then put it in the mouths of the babies. Or scholars say that if a person is cooking, a wife is cooking, she knows her husband has a temper, that's not justifying the temper, but if he does have a temper, she just tastes the food. So tasting is the tongue. You don't put it in the throat, right? And remember, what breaks the fast really is that it goes into the throat, not the tongue. And that's why in wudu, you can do wudu, it goes to the tongue. So if she tastes or he tastes, whatever the case might be, tasting the food for a legitimate reason. And again, we gave some examples of legitimate reason. Or even chewing the food. Now in our case, I don't imagine we would need to chew, but fiqh is, you never know. So if you need to chew for a reason, as long as you do not ingest, then the fasting is not affected and it is not broken at all. We also said about vomiting, intentional vomiting breaks the fast. Therefore, in this list, unintentional vomiting does not break the fast. So, if you're feeling nauseous and you have some vomiting, it overcame you, this does not break the fast. Another thing that does not break the fast, and there's a bit of a huge controversy, but inshallah, we will just say it does not break the fast, and that seems to be the stronger opinion, withdrawing blood. Withdrawing blood. Now, whether it's wise to donate blood when you're fasting, that's a medical question. From my perspective, I give you the fiqh. The doctors will tell you the medicine. You don't want to feel weak and whatnot, that's fine. But if you were to donate blood, or let's be realistic, you have to do a medical exam, and the doctor takes out this much blood. So he puts in a needle and he withdraws blood. Some of the stricter scholars, they said it breaks the fast, but inshallah, the strongest opinion that it does not break the fast at all. So if you go to the doctor for a medical test, for an exam, and you have to withdraw the blood, then your fast is not broken. And these are the primary lists of the things that do not break the fast, and people assume that it does break the fast. The etiquettes of fasting in terms of fiqh are very easy. The suhoor is very strongly encouraged. Our Prophet ﷺ said, تَسَحَّرُوا فَإِنَّ فِي السُّحُورِ بَرَكَةً. Eat the suhoor, because eating the suhoor, Allah's blessings come down upon it. And it is permissible, in fact it is encouraged to eat suhoor as late as possible. And therefore, our Prophet ﷺ, there were 2 adhans being given in Medina, one by Ibn Maktoum and one by Bilal. And Bilal would give the adhan a little bit before Ibn Maktoum, maybe by 5-10 minutes. And the Prophet ﷺ said, do not let the adhan of Bilal stop you from eating and drinking until the adhan of Ibn Maktoum. So Ibn Maktoum would give the adhan at a more precise time. And Bilal would give it to be cautious a little bit earlier. And the Prophet ﷺ said, don't worry about the adhan of Bilal. Go ahead and eat and drink until the second adhan of Ibn Maktoum. In our perspective, basically, what does this mean? If your chart says 4:50 is the end of imsak of eating and drinking, then you may eat really until 4:50. And I also said, and I'll say it again, that these timings are approximate, which means you don't have to time yourself down to 4:49, 59 seconds. If you're drinking and it's 4:50, go ahead and finish the glass, and then don't drink after that. In other words, these are approximate timings, and it's not as if it is down to a millisecond, because in the end of the day, the Sharia is not based upon clock timings. The Sharia is based upon generally looking at the sky and whatnot, and that's an approximation. So no doubt, give yourself some leeway. It's best to finish eating by 4:45, 4:47, but if you're late one day, and you're quickly eating and drinking, then if you delay by half a minute, by even 1 minute, inshallah, it's not the end of the world, but don't make this a habit. It should not be your habit, and it's an approximate timing, and Allah Azza wa Jalla is not going to call us to account for small milliseconds in the clock. Also, we know that it is sunnah to break our fast as early as possible, and this is a sunnah we do not need to be taught, because there is a countdown every single evening to the merry millisecond. So this is a sunnah, alhamdulillah, the Muslim ummah follows it without any problem. So the Prophet ﷺ encouraged us to break our fast early, and he encouraged us to eat suhoor late. In other words, to minimize the actual timing of the fast to the very minimal possible. And we know, and it is a well-established sunnah, that we should eat dates when we break the fast. And when we eat dates, something that I remind myself and all of you of is that, subhanAllah, for us the date has become a token item, that we just eat it and then we jump onto the 10-course meal. For our Prophet ﷺ, the dates and water generally was the meal. The whole 10-course meal was 10 dates. That was his meal. And I want us to think of that every day when we see those luscious food items here, that for most of the days, the Prophet ﷺ only had a small bowl of dates, and that was it. And that was his iftar, and that was his dinner, that was sometimes even his suhoor. That was what they subsisted on, dates and black water, meaning the dirty water. They didn't even have pure water. Also, of the etiquettes of fasting is to make dua before the breaking of the fast. And our Prophet ﷺ said that this dua is accepted by Allah. The dua of the sa'im when he breaks his fast is accepted by Allah. This is a hadith, memorize it. And we all know it is very difficult to concentrate after 16, 17 hours. Now we're sitting and all of the food and the smell is wafting, and we see all of these fried items and luscious dates and whatnot. Now if you can concentrate on your du'as, that is a dua that is never ever rejected by Allah. And so we have 30 days of timing to make dua every single day before the fast. Let us concentrate during the last minutes before Maghrib time, before the iftar. Let us concentrate. And I remind myself and all of you that when you're in a gathering of other Muslims, when you're invited to iftar parties, then go ahead and be the one who tells people to do good for the sake of Allah, not for showing off. Remind people that, brothers, sisters, just 2 minutes left, it's time for dua. And so everybody should then make dua from their heart. It should not be the time of gossip, the time of wasting. This is a blessed time. The last few minutes of the fast is a blessed time. We should remind ourselves to make dua, and there's so much to make dua about in the Muslim world and even in our personal lives at this time. Also, my dear brothers and sisters, remember, the whole month is not just about abstaining from food and drink. It is about spiritual purity. It is about spiritual taqwa. It is about establishing consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let us keep this goal in mind. One final fiqh point before we conclude the first half of our khutbah, and that is, who does not fast? Who does not fast? Who has a legitimate excuse for not fasting? There are 4 categories of people who have a legitimate excuse. My dear brothers and sisters, unfortunately, we have a problem now where people become too lax and they simply assume that fasting is not necessary for the most trivial reason. No, fasting is one of the arkan of Islam. Fasting is one of the obligations of Islam. Fasting was revealed in the very second year of the hijrah. After the Prophet emigrated, the very first thing that came out after salah was fasting and zakat. They both came down basically right after the hijrah by a few months, they came down. And fasting is an obligation upon every single Muslim who is capable of doing so. There are 4 categories of those who are excused from the fasting. The first and the most common one is the woman in her monthly cycle or after she delivers and she is bleeding in that portion, the nifas months. So the woman in her hayd, in her menses, and the woman in her nifas, such a lady obviously does not fast and she makes it up later on. Now, my dear sisters in Islam, do not play around with the sharia of Allah. Many sisters are lazy. When their menses finish, they think they can delay the fast simply by not performing the ghusl, by delaying the full ritual ablution. Allah Azza wa Jal knows when your menses finish, and you know as well. And when your menses finish, the very next day you must begin your fast. In fact, if your menses finish even 5 minutes before the Fajr Adhan, the time of Imsak, and you know the sign which is the whitish discharge, if your menses finish 5 minutes before the Adhan of Fajr, then legally, even if you do not take the ghusl, you must fast that day. So keep this point in mind and monitor the end of the month. You all know your cycles, you all know your routines. Towards the end of the month, monitor and realize that if it finishes, wake up the day that you think it's going to finish. Wake up before Fajr to make sure that in fact it has finished or not finished. Because if it has finished, then that day is obligatory on you and it is not allowed to play games with the sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the first category. The second category are men and women who are sick and traveling. And this category, it is permissible for you to fast. It is permissible for you to leave the fast. It's up to you. But the better thing to do is that if fasting is a hardship, then you should not fast. If fasting complicates your medical problem, if fasting is a hardship during travel, and you know best, travel is relative. For some of us, traveling is an hour and a half drive in the air-conditioned car. In such a case, maybe don't break the fast if you don't want to. Sometimes traveling involves a 15-hour journey across the globe, in which case fasting will be a big problem. You know best. And our Prophet ﷺ said, it is not righteousness to fast while traveling, meaning if it's difficult to fast, Allah will not reward you if you're causing hardship when you are fasting during travel. You decide. If it's a piece of cake, if it's easy, then go ahead and fast. Also in terms of sickness, what constitutes a legitimate sickness? The response is common sense will tell you. You don't need to go to a doctor or even an alim. Common sense will tell you. If you have a little bruise or cut on your finger, that's not going to cause you to not fast. But if you have a high fever, subhanAllah, you need your liquids, you need to drink all day long, you need this, you need that. A high fever definitely is an excuse for leaving the fast and then making it up on a later day. You know, use your better judgment. What sickness is such that it will complicate the fast if I continue fasting? And there might be some gray areas here and there. You're not quite sure. So go ahead and attempt in the morning to fast. If you feel you're getting a more strong headache or this or that, your sickness is being complicated, then break the fast, and Allah Azza wa Jal is forgiving and merciful. Also, there are gray areas of certain medical issues such as diabetes and others. I cannot give you a blanket fatwa. Go to a Muslim doctor. And why do I say Muslim doctor? Because a Muslim will understand the obligation of fasting. Not that we don't trust a non-Muslim doctor, but a non-Muslim does not understand how important fasting is. A Muslim doctor will understand how important fasting is. So if you're diabetic, or if you have a chronic illness in this regard, go to a Muslim reputable doctor so that the Muslim doctor can weigh between, in your case, if you have a heavy meal with these and these ingredients, and then you break your fast at the appropriate time, inshallah, it's okay. So the Muslim doctor can tell you this. Because the Muslim doctor has experience of fasting, and he knows the obligation of fasting. So if there are areas such as diabetes, such as other things of this nature, then go seek counsel with a health professional who understands the obligations of fasting. This is the second category, sickness and traveler. The third category of those who don't have to fast are those who are permanently sick or those who are too elderly and weak to fast. Permanently sick, severe case of diabetes. Severe case of diabetes. He cannot remain without food for 5 hours, let's say. Khalas. So Allah's sharia has not come to kill people or to make life difficult. For such a person, somebody who is very old, 70, 80 years old, he doesn't have it in him to fast. For such a person, the fasting is forgiven, and he will have to give a fidya, which is feeding one person one meal per day that he doesn't fast. And the average fidya in America is between $8 to $10. If you want to be safe, give 10. If you give $8 a day, no problem. And you have to give fidya according to the land you're living in. Don't calculate fidya based upon Pakistan or Bangladesh. Calculate fidya based upon America because you're living here. You may send it to Pakistan or Bangladesh, but it has to be $8 a day, not 8 rupees a day, because you're living in this land. So your fidya is calculated according to this. And this is the third category. The final category, and then we conclude our first khutbah. The final category is the category that's a bit of an ikhtilaf over, and that is women who are pregnant and women who are feeding children. This category is where many women show laxity. The fact of the matter is, an average, healthy young lady who is pregnant or who is feeding should not really have an excuse to break the fast. However, if the doctor says, or if she herself feels fainting or whatnot, then yes, we understand, and so the Sharia will allow her to break the fast. Nonetheless, an average young healthy lady who is pregnant or who is feeding a child, generally speaking, should not just jump to the conclusion, I don't have to fast. Because the fasting, generally speaking, should not harm her situation. Nonetheless, let her seek the advice of her own professional counselor. And also, again, let's encourage a Muslim doctor who understands the importance of fasting. If the doctor feels, and if she as well feels, that fasting will not be possible, then she may avoid the fast, but she will have to make up the days that she has missed. She cannot give money because her ruling is the ruling of the one who was sick or traveling. That is, she will overcome the sickness, she will come back to a regular state, and she will then have to fast all of the days. And indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. This is a summary of the fiqh of fasting. Inshallah, in the second khutbah, very briefly, will give us some spiritual reminders to keep us benefited and to keep us, inshallah, up to our game in Ramadan. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-azim wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bima fihi min al-ayati wa dhikr al-hakim. Aqulu ma tasma'un wa astaghfirullah al-azim li wa lakum wa li sa'il muslimin kulli dhanbin fastaghfiruhu innahu huwal ghafurur rahim. And can I ask the brothers to move forward? We're already packed in the back, inshallah. الحمد لله الواحد الأحد الصمد الذي لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد وبعد. Very briefly, my dear brothers and sisters, inshallah the next few khutbahs as well remind ourselves of other advice for the month of Ramadan. First and foremost, my dear brothers and sisters, realize that the month of Ramadan is primarily the month of the Quran. It is actually primarily not the month of fasting. In fact, the Quran is mentioned more with Ramadan than fasting. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى فمن شهد منكم شهر فليصمه. First Allah mentions the Quran, then He mentions fasting. So the month of Ramadan is more about the Quran than it is about the fast. And therefore, let us make sure that we make this month the month of the Quran. Let us have regular Quranic recitations in our personal lives. Let us listen to the Quran being recited in the masjid. Let us make this truly the month of the Quran. And it is sunnah to complete at least one recitation of the Quran in this month, if not 2 or more. And it is very easy to do so if after every salah you simply read 5 pages or even 4 pages of the Quran. If you read 4 pages of the Quran after every salah, then 5 prayers will give you 20 pages, and 20 pages is 1 juz. And 4 pages you can read in 3 to 4 minutes, maximum 5 to 6 minutes if you're a slow reader. So reading the Quran is very doable if you pace yourself in a realistic manner. Ramadan is also the month of dua, and the month of dua we already mentioned before every single fasting breaks, we make dua. Throughout the day we make dua. In the middle of the night we make dua. Ramadan is the month of dhikr. Our tongues, even if they are dry from not drinking water, they should be wet with the dhikr of Allah. We should always be doing the dhikr of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Also, Ramadan is the month of the masjid. It is in this month that, alhamdulillah, every masjid in this whole globe is packed to capacity. People are praying outside. People are praying in the parking lots. And wallahi, the iman of every one of us soars when we see the love that people have for the masjid. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. And that is a great sign. And let us make this the month of the masjid as well. And as you know, in this masjid of ours, alhamdulillah, we have regular taraweeh and regular lecture as well. And we have call this as usual the family Taraweeh. We're going to have Taraweeh exactly 1 hour and 15 minutes on the weekdays and 1 hour and 30 minutes on the weekends. We're meant to cater to families, and we want the families to come in and enjoy themselves realistically without making it too long. And it is healthy. Some masajid go longer in this community and some masajid go shorter. Let there be different, catering to different audiences. And this masjid has decided we will cater mainly to the family. There's going to be babysitting. There's going to be a realistic Taraweeh, 1 hour and 15 minutes. And inshallah ta'ala, we encourage all of you to join in that. Also realize, my dear brothers and sisters, that one of the biggest problems that we see, and all of us see this, is that in the first few days, the first week of Ramadan, people, they become so excited, they actually burn themselves out. And it is really sad to see that in the first 7 to 10 days, the masajid are packed. And then the masjid attendance starts to dwindle down. And this indicates that these people have not understood that the middle 10 days of Ramadan are more important and the last 10 days are the most important. It does not make any sense that people burn themselves out in the first week of Ramadan. They don't pray in the last 10 days and they're praying in the first 10 days. My dear brothers and sisters, pace yourselves. Realize, keep it in your head, keep it in your mind. I need to store my energy for the middle stretch, and then I need to be my top of the game in the last 10 days of the month of Ramadan. Put this in your mind from now, that I'm going to be the most energetic in the final 10 days of this month. If you have to take off from work, if you're able to take off for a few days, if you're able to negotiate your schedule, save that for the end 10, not for the beginning or the middle 10. Make sure that you're at the top of your game in the final 10 days of this month of Ramadan. Also, set up your daily routines. Men are creatures of habit. Men are creatures of habit. We are habitual people. We wake up at a certain time. We do certain things at certain times. So set up a daily routine of Quran, of dhikr, of ibadah in this month, and keep up that routine. And realize, my dear brothers and sisters, that as one of the scholars of the Salaf, one of the scholars of the past said, that the worst person of Ramadan is the one who only abstains from food and drink. I.e., he doesn't abstain from sins. He doesn't abstain from backbiting. He doesn't abstain from wasting his time. He said the worst person in Ramadan is the one who only stops eating and drinking. He doesn't stop anything else. The purpose of eating and drinking is so that we stop other sins as well. We all have sins, my dear brothers and sisters. We are sinners because we're human. This month is meant to minimize, to eliminate those sins. Any sins we have, we now need to seize them, stop them in this month of Ramadan. And my dear brothers and sisters, this must be said as well, no matter how awkward it is. Right now is the month of football season. Right now is the month where everybody is engrossed in watching that match that only occurs once every 4 years. I am not going to lecture you that it is haram to watch such matches. I will lecture you that anybody who prefers anything over the regular qiyams and regular salat and regular taraweeh, then this person does not have his priorities in order. My dear brothers and sisters, Ramadan only comes really once a year. And it is far more important than matches and games and whatnot. Prioritize. If you must watch, make sure it is not at the expense of your regular ibadah. That's my point to you. If you must do it, make sure you have your regular routines of Quran and of qiyam and of dhikr and of dua, and realize that qiyam, i.e. taraweeh, is one of the highlights of Ramadan. Our Prophet ﷺ said, whoever prays every night of Ramadan, all of his previous sins will be forgiven. So who would want to give up? It's only an hour and 15 minutes. That's all we're going to do. This is our promise to you at MIC. If Isha begins at 10 o'clock, our goal by 11:15, khalas, everything is finished, including the lecture. We have, alhamdulillah, held up this goal for the last 3 years, and inshallah we intend to do the same as well. It's just an hour, 15 minutes of your daily routine, so that inshallah we can make this qiyam every single evening. And a final advice, my dear brothers and sisters, firstly to all of you, then to my sisters, then to my young brothers and sisters. To all of you, realize it's now the month of June and July. And no doubt this is the most difficult month to fast. And it is the sunnah of Allah that fasting occurs at different times of the year. And on average, a regular adult life cycle will only face Ramadan in July twice. That's it. On average, because it comes every 30 years. So on average, it's only going to come twice. And it is the sunnah of Allah. Some Ramadans in December, sweet and easy and cold. Some Ramadans in July, so that we can taste the differences of each month. So appreciate this blessing and thank Allah that you have been given this opportunity to worship Allah in a relatively more difficult time. And if you think it is difficult here, I have just just come back from a trip. I went up to Scotland. Fajr and Scotland is 1:30 a.m. and Maghrib is 10:20 p.m. So imagine the Muslims there. A few months ago I was in Norway, as you know, and they don't even have Fajr and Maghrib visibly seen over there. And some places, and that's what's up north, and some places in southern Norway, then their Ramadan is going to be 22 and a half hours this year, because there is going to be just a bit up and down, so they will have to fast 22 and a half hours. If you think this is difficult here, then thank Allah that we're not living in some more difficult climates, and alhamdulillah, it's a reasonable fast in this climate. And also, here we are complaining. Wallahi, I cannot imagine the Sahaba could not change their schedule at all. They would have to wake up the same time, go to the hot fields the same mornings that they would go before Ramadan, work in that environment, in the dust, in the desert, no air conditioning, no cooling, no temperature climate. They'd have to work exactly as they worked out in the hot desert for the entire day. We have 8 hours of work. They didn't have these 8-hour schedules. They would have to work for their bellies and their children's rizq throughout the day. I don't know how they managed it. Here we are, air-conditioned rooms, air-conditioned cars. We jump out of the car right into the masjid, from the masjid straight back into our places of work, all of them air-conditioned. No matter what it is, alhamdulillah, it is doable. Yet it is difficult for us. So please, make sure you drink lots of water throughout the night. Make sure that it is a part of your routine, that we don't get dehydrated throughout the day. This is advice for all of us. Advice for our sisters, my dear sisters in Islam. No doubt in this month, certain obligations are added upon you that are not very good, and that is the obligations, I say it in quotation marks, of extra cooking. And this is not appropriate. Nonetheless, the culture has become this way, that Ramadan has become a month of cooking and a month of cuisine, and it is a sad reality. This is the case. Nonetheless, try your best, sisters, to negotiate with the families, with the husbands, at least a few days if you can. Concentrate extra on ibadah and worship. This whole month should not just become an extra cooking and cleaning. That's not the purpose of the month. Also realize, my dear sisters, that just because you're in your monthly cycle doesn't mean the month has stopped. You can still do lots of things, dua and dhikr and studying. Lots of things can be done that will be rewarded more. So even if you're in your monthly cycle and you cannot fast, that doesn't mean you cannot do anything else. There are many ways and opportunities to come closer to Allah. And the final point of advice, my dear young brothers and sisters, those in middle school, those in high school, those in college, subhanAllah, this is a great opportunity for most of you because school is off. You don't have to go to school. Yes, it's a long day. I know it's a long day. It's a very long day. But at the same time, you don't have school. So alhamdulillah, take advantage. Allah has given you this beautiful month in your vacation period. So this is a vacation from your daily routine. So you have extra time to worship Allah, extra time to read Quran, extra time to come to the masjid. And it's okay for you youngsters if you sleep extra in the day and then you stay awake at night to do extra Quran and dhikr. Go ahead and do that, because alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed you in this regard. You don't have to go to school. So take advantage of this free time. And believe you me, look at your mothers and fathers, look at your people who are earning paying the rents for you. They don't get off. They have to go to the exact same schedule. They still have to wake up at the same time. One day you also will be in their shoes. And when Ramadan comes, you will not have vacation. But alhamdulillah, now you are young and Allah has given you a vacation. So take it as a blessing from Him to come closer to Him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this month of Ramadan our best Ramadan ever. Allahumma inni da'in fa'amminu. Allahumma la tad'na fi hadha yawmi dhanban illa ghafarta, wa la hamman illa farajta, wa la daynan illa qadayta, wa la maridan illa shafayta, wa la عسيرا إلا يسرته. اللهم اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم من أرادنا أو أراد الإسلام والمسلمين بالسوء فاشغله بنفسه واجعل تدميره في تدبيره يا قوي يا عزيز. عباد الله، إن الله تعالى أمركم بأمر بدأ به بنفسه وثنى بملائكة قدسه وثلث بكم أيها المؤمنون من جنه وإنسه، فقال عز من قائل عليما: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وأنعم على عبدك رسولك محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. عباد الله، إن الله تعالى يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم واشكروه يزد لكم ولذكر الله تعالى أكبر. وأقم الصلاة.